She's like a sickness in my brain, a vision standing by the window pane. She ripples through the blinds and leaves me in a daze. It's in the way her body moves me, the way she grabs me and intoxicates, until the signals in my mind forget to operate. Fragile skull. I take my pleasure from my alcohol. She'll never give you any time at all. She just comes in and goes, you know, and she's got me living in a chemical love, and
Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing a coffee and crime time, but I'm going to do something a little different because it's about the Gannon Stauch case, and we're going over the arrest affidavit of Letitia Stauch. And it's several pages. I mean, it's over 30 pages. I've read it twice so far. And what we're going to do is we're going to discuss this affidavit, and then we are going to also discuss the case as we discuss the affidavit. So basically what we knew combined with what we didn't know from the affidavit, and then try to kind of put together a theory at the end of it. So it's going to be broken up into probably 3 parts, just because it's a very long arrest affidavit. And I want to give this case the attention and the care and the thought that it deserves. I'm a little late doing this just because I have been for the past month trying to sit down and get through this affidavit and create a video for you guys about Gannon Stauch, because I know everybody wanted updates, but this case hit me hard. A case hasn't hit me this hard since the Chris Watts case. I mean, the Thomas Valva case was also very tough for me, but something about the Gannon Stauch case, being so close to my own son's age, being similar in personality to my own son, was very difficult to get through. So it did take me a little bit of time, but I am here now so we can discuss it. And I do have thoughts about this, and I do have some maybe contradictory opinions to what the affidavit states. Now, what we have to remember is this affidavit was put out 2 weeks before Gannon Stauch's remains were even discovered. This was the arrest affidavit for Letitia. So they were going to arrest her before they found his remains. And since then, everything's pretty much been sealed off. So we're not getting any information. If there was any additional evidence discovered on or around his body, if anything that was discovered on or around his body is telling a different story than the arrest affidavit states. So I do have some opinions, and there are places that I disagree with the suppositions of the person writing the affidavit, but it's just my opinion, and I would like to discuss it with you guys thoroughly. So grab your coffee, sit down, have your breakfast, relax, because we are going into a deep dive into this affidavit, and then we're going to discuss what we think about it at the end of that. Before we get started, I want to have a word from our sponsor, and our sponsor for this video is Magellan TV. Magellan TV is a new kind of documentary streaming service. Founded by filmmakers, their team of producers and curators brings together premium content which dives deep into diverse subjects and interests. These programs can be watched anytime, anywhere on your television, laptop, or mobile device. And Magellan TV is also compatible with Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV, Google Play, and iOS. You can even cast from your phone to your TV. Magellan TV also has the richest and most varied history content available anywhere: ancient, modern, current, early modern, war, biography, and even non-historical genres like science and crime are historical in nature. Currently, there are over 2,000 documentaries and documentary series available on Magellan TV, and they add more every single week. It's my favorite thing to do when I'm trying to find something to watch is pick up my phone, put on the Magellan TV app, and look into the What's New section. On that note, because I know a lot of you are interested in trying Magellan TV and a lot of you already have signed up for Magellan TV, I have a program recommendation. A Question of Innocence is a political documentary that takes a look at the death penalty in the United States by centering on Tommy Ziegler, who, now 68, has been on death row in Florida for almost 4 decades.
Detective Don Fry has no problem believing Tommy is the mastermind behind the massacre. During a search of Tommy's office, he finds a compelling financial motive.
On a similar and related note, the documentary The Chair is the story of the very first electric chair execution, the people involved, the development of technology, and the debate that ensued.
But an inexorable process was moving against him. At the furthest reach of New York State, the chair was to find its first human victim.
So really interesting, factual, thought-provoking documentaries. I believe they're both under an hour each, so you can watch them back to back. Magellan TV is the best source of documentaries that I have ever discovered. I would not say that to you if I did not absolutely believe it. And right now, if you're interested in trying it out, there's a link in the description box. And if you click that link and sign up for Magellan TV using my link in the description box, you will get 1 month free as a free trial. You can cancel anytime. You're not contracted into anything, but I really don't think that you're going to want to. Thank you to Magellan TV, who has been a very loyal sponsor to this channel, who I appreciate so much. And thank you to you guys out there who have been loyal viewers of this channel and who allow me to talk about these sponsors. Let's get into the video. Okay, so this affidavit is kind of broken up into a few different sections. So what I'm going to do is cover as much as I can in this first video, and then I will record the other video right after so that I can put them up pretty much one right after the other. It says redacted at the top of this affidavit. I'll place a link in the description box if you're interested in checking it out for yourself. Not much of this is redacted, which I was happy to see. So this affidavit was filed on February 28th, and it basically just says that this is the issuance of an arrest warrant for Stauch Letitia, date of birth 8/4/1983, and then her social security number is obviously redacted. Although I'm not sure why anybody would want to steal her identity at this point. It also gives Gannon's name and birth date, 9/29/2008. September 29th is my wedding anniversary. It's a very special day for me. It makes me very sad that Gannon's birthday was on September 29th because Gannon is very special to me. It says that the person who wrote this is Jessica Bethel, a duly sworn and state-certified police officer and detective with the El Paso County Sheriff's Office, known from now on as EPSO, because we're not going to keep saying El Paso County Sheriff's Office, EPSO. And she has been employed as such since 2010. She says she's participated in other law enforcement investigations, including homicide investigations, child abuse, weapons violation, assaults, and other violations of Colorado revised statutes. She says she's familiar with social media networks and electronic methods of communication. She's attended a 1-week crime scene analysis training course through the Colorado Bureau of Investigation. She's also relied on other investigators from outside agencies with more investigative training and experience, including, but not limited to, the FBI, Special Agent Andrew Cohen, and FBI Special Agent David Donati. Item 2 states that the detective who wrote this, Jessica Bethel, submits the following facts to demonstrate probable cause to believe that on or about January 27th, 2020, in the county of El Paso in the state of Colorado, the defendant Letitia Stauch, also known as AKA Letitia Hardin, did commit the following offenses, hereinafter referred to as the violations. Now, this is important, and I want to point it out. They will often say this in the affidavit, on or about, believed to be. So what you're reading in this affidavit is not obviously fact. It's not information that has been gathered and analyzed after an arrest and a trial and a confession. It's what they believe happened based on the evidence that they found in their investigation. And that's going to come up a couple of times, and I think it's good that they did kind of leave a little bit of an opening there for some of these things to not be correct. So the violations are murder in the first degree, child under 12, position of trust, child abuse resulting in death, tampering with a deceased human body, and tampering with physical evidence. I'm going to skip a little bit because basically she's just saying why she believes these things, personal observations, training experience, information obtained from other agents, law enforcement officials, and witnesses. So why do I think this stuff? This is why. Now, item 5, once again, is going to go back to what I just said, how they have probable cause to believe these things, how they believe on or about, or this may have happened. And she basically says that much of this affidavit was prepared by FBI Special Agent Cohen, but that she's reviewed the below facts carefully and has no reason to doubt any investigators' accuracy or truthfulness in their reports. This affidavit is intended to show merely that there is sufficient probable cause for the requested warrant and does not set forth all of my knowledge about this matter. Because I really feel like a lot of people read this, and it came out or was leaked after Letitia was arrested, and I believe after Gannon's remains were found, this was leaked. So I think a lot of people read it and thought that it was kind of the end-all be-all, but we have to keep in mind that this was written 2 weeks before Gannon was found. So she says in item 7, investigators have executed physical search warrants and collected evidence from vehicles associated with Letitia, cellular devices utilized by Letitia, and from the residence of Letitia. Electronic search warrants have been executed to entities including but not limited to Facebook, Apple Inc., Google Inc., AT&T Wireless, Verizon Wireless, ADT Security System, Tile, Life 360, Yahoo, and Ring doorbell service. Some of the physical evidence has been examined by a laboratory for DNA profiles. Investigators also recovered a significant amount of exterior video footage from individual privately owned neighborhood security cameras, businesses around Colorado Springs, Colorado, and cameras in other surrounding areas. Some cameras provided recorded footage of the exterior of the Stauch residence. So it starts off by saying the Stauch family and general information. The Stauch family is a blended family, and all will be discussed at various points below. This representation purposely has little details in order to give an overview of the family structure. So it says the father is Eugene Al Stauch. We'll call him Al. The stepmother is Letitia Stauch. We'll call her T. That's because that's what I refer to her in my notes. It was shorter to write than Letitia. The daughter is Harley Hunt. Now, this is the daughter of Letitia by blood, not Al Stauch, and she is a minor child, 17 years of age. We also have Gannon Stauch, minor, 11 years of age, related by blood to Al, not Letitia. And then we have Al's daughter, Lena Stauch, minor, 8 years of age, once again related by blood to Al and not Letitia. The following vehicles will be discussed at various points below. We have a red Nissan Frontier. That was Al Stauch's truck. We have a black Volkswagen Tiguan. Now that's Letitia's main car. We also have a white Volkswagen Jetta. That's Harley, Letitia's daughter's main vehicle. And then there was 2 rental cars, a silver Nissan Altima and a white Kia Rio. The silver Nissan Altima was a rental that was obtained by Letitia's aunt, a woman named Brenda Acquard, and it was utilized by Letitia from January 30th to February 1st, 2020, and this was after her main vehicle, the Tiguan, was seized by the El Paso County Sheriff's Office. And that happened on January 29th. And then the white Kia Rio was a rental car that was obtained and utilized by Letitia on January 28th to January 29th. Now remember, she rented this white Kia Rio before her main car, the Volkswagen, was seized by the sheriff's department. We have some background information on Letitia Stauch here. It says that she is the last person known to investigators to see 11-year-old Gannon Stauch alive. Letitia is Gannon's stepmother and was Gannon's only known adult supervision in the days preceding and on the day of his murder. At the time of Gannon's murder, Letitia was employed by School District 20 as an assistant teacher, although I have also learned that she is no longer employed there. It also says that they were able to locate prior criminal history for Letitia, and they learned that in North Carolina, Robeson County Court Case 2001, Letitia was convicted after a trial for communicating threats, a misdemeanor, but they were able to locate her sentencing information. Letitia was also convicted of unauthorized use of a motor vehicle in Robeson County Court Case and was sentenced to 45 days of confinement and 18 months of probation. So Letitia has served some time before, and she doesn't have a spotless past. Although not criminal in nature, they were able to locate a document memorializing the suspension of Letitia's North Carolina teaching certificate on or about May 11th, 2016. As part of that document, it's reported that Letitia has filed unsubstantiated claims of harassment and retaliation, and the North Carolina State Board found that Mrs. Stauch breached her contract by engaging in unprofessional conduct, willfully neglecting her duty, and failing to comply with the provisions of her contract. Now, I believe this was the school she was working at where Letitia claimed she was being harassed and treated unfairly by relatives of Landon Hoyt, which was Gannon's biological mother. We also have some background information on Eugene Albert Stauch, aka Al, date of birth 9/20/1982. Oh, he was born the same month as his son. They share the same birthday month. Al is Gannon's biological father and is married to Letitia Stauch. Mr. Stauch was deployed with the National Guard during the dates of January 25th, 2020 to January 28th, 2020. Mr. Stauch spent the night in Denver on January 25th, 2020 and departed via commercial airline on January 26th, 2020, returning via commercial airline on January 28th, 2020. Investigators were able to corroborate this information, and Mr. Stauch has cooperated fully in the Blow investigation. So in this section, they go into pretty much what happened in this missing persons investigation in Colorado. They start off by saying that some portions of the affidavit, depending on the date of events being discussed, the investigation may be referred to a missing persons investigation. In some parts, it may be referred to as a murder investigation. In this case, they are indeed one and the same. The subsequent information is going to surround the period of Monday, January 27th, 2020, which is the day that Gannon went missing, to Wednesday, January 29th, 2020. So all the time in this affidavit was military time. And I think we've had this discussion before. I have a problem telling time in general. A digital clock, good. But an actual clock, like this one back here, it takes me a couple minutes to figure it out, okay? My brain's smart in some places and really not smart in other places. We're all like that, right? We have our strengths. We have our weaknesses. I have a problem telling time. And you add military time to that, it's really tough. And I kept asking my husband, what's this in military time? And he was telling me, and then he was like, you just subtract 12. And I was like, what? How? What? This doesn't make any sense. I know, it's probably way easier, way easier than I think it is, but, I get hung up on these things. So I had to go through using a military time converter and convert all the military time into actual time and then just make notes on the affidavit. Anyways, at about 6:55 p.m., Letitia Stauch reported Gannon Stauch missing after calling 911. During that call, she was instructed to call the El Paso County non-emergent line. In summary, Letitia stated Gannon was supposed to be home approximately an hour ago and that she was unable to locate him at a friend's house. Her story would dramatically change multiple times over the following days, as we know. Investigators do not believe Letitia went to any neighboring houses to attempt to locate Gannon, and it was one of the many lies told by Letitia during the investigation. Letitia was unable to provide the actual location of the homes she went to, the names of Gannon's friends he was supposed to be playing with, or the names of the parents of Gannon's friends. And we discussed this in the very first video where we talked about Gannon and Letitia, where if it's your son, stepson or not, and you're allowing him to leave the house to go play with a friend, you're going to know where that friend lives, what that friend's name is, and you're going to know their parents, or at least have their parents' name and cell phone number so you can call and make sure they're home and the kids aren't unsupervised. You're going to call and make sure he's going to come home, or you're going to be able to call when he doesn't come home on time because kids forget and they stay too long at their friend's house to say, hey, can you send Gannon home? I mean, we have a bunch of kids in this neighborhood that I live in, and they all play at each other's houses. Some days they'll be here, some days they'll be across the street. And even though all of the parents aren't necessarily friendly or even get along half the time, we all have each other's numbers. That way, if I know my kid is at your house and he's supposed to come home for dinner and he hasn't come home, I can shoot you a quick text and be like, hey, can you send Aiden home? But she didn't know the names of Gannon's friends. She didn't know what friend he was at. She didn't know what the address was. And right away, that's going to set off red flags and alarm bells for an investigator. Deputies responded to Letitia's residence at 6627 Mandan Drive, Colorado Springs, Colorado, and were unable to locate Gannon. And I do want to talk about that in a moment. Deputies conducted a limited search of the residence and took a report from Letitia. Some of the interaction between the responding deputies and Letitia were captured on body-worn cameras. A missing persons investigation was initiated and in the coming days developed into a murder investigation. So there's body cam footage out there that exists of how Letitia was behaving, what she was saying, her body language, maybe where she was standing in the house, maybe if she was sort of trying to lead the police officers away from different areas of the house. And you may not feel that's important, but in the Chris Watts case, that body cam footage was incredibly telling. So I would really, really like to get my hands on this body cam footage eventually and be able to view it. So a tip line was established and investigators received hundreds of tips and leads from the public by way of email and telephone calls. As part of this tip line, 2 ransom notes were received by email demanding money in the form of Bitcoin in exchange for Gannon's return. Now, the investigators did take steps to validate these ransom notes, including resolving and geolocating the internet protocol, the IP addresses from the email headers, and requesting subscriber information from the ISP that hosted these IP addresses. One of these ransom notes was sent from a foreign-based email account that is accessible by multiple individuals. Investigators were unable to trace the user of the IP addresses and believe the ransom notes to be fraudulent and strictly designed as a scheme to receive money. Now, when I read this in the affidavit, initially I thought, did Tisha send these ransom notes to continue this whole missing persons narrative. Did she do it herself? Did she call someone or have someone do it? Did she use some weird internet online service? Because, you can do anything online. We talked about this in the Dalia Dippolito case where there was actually an online service where you could make spoof phone calls and make it look like it was coming from someplace else. Now, this was obviously long before Google Voice, because you can do that now with Google Voice and other apps, but there's an internet service for everything. And as we'll soon see, Letitia even used an internet service to try and obtain fake polygraph test results. So is there some sort of internet service that she could use to maybe have some fake ransom email sent, making it look like it comes from some foreign-based email account? I'm not sure if she's connected to these ransom notes, but I'm not willing to put that to the side and discount it at this point. Letitia initially claimed she last saw Gannon on January 27, 2020, when he left her residence to play with his friends somewhere around 15 hours. So he left about 3:15 p.m., and at 6:55, she calls and says he didn't come home. He was supposed to come home about an hour ago, so about 5:15, and he's not home. And remember, she said she was working out in the basement when he asked her if he could go play at a friend's house, and she said yes. She claims that she attempted to find him at a neighbor's house, even though the police who investigated this couldn't find any proof that she did so, and she sent her daughter Harley Hunt, date of birth May 1st, 2002, to look for Gannon at a park. Letitia lied to investigators on multiple occasions, has unexplained abnormal behavior such as obtaining a rental car, disconnecting her cell phone from the cellular network for an extended period of time, the false reporting of an alleged rape, abnormal patterns of travel, a continuously evolving story with material changes in facts and circumstances, and has since left the state of Colorado. These actions, when combined with other facts in this affidavit, support the totality of probable cause for the requested warrant and will be discussed below. Now, in this affidavit, they essentially start off with the murder. And then throughout the affidavit, they sort of provide additional supporting evidence for why they believe the murder happened on January 27th in Gannon's bedroom. So I'm going to try to combine this portion of the affidavit with the supporting evidence in the rest of the affidavit. That way it doesn't feel like we're flopping back and forth and everything feels more organized. But this says that the following section will outline what investigators have learned about Letitia's activity on January 27th, 2020, and outline the period when Gannon was likely murdered. Now remember, they're saying likely murdered. They're not saying that this is a fact. They're not saying they know this for certain. It's what they believe based on the evidence and what they collected. So it says that they believe Gannon was murdered by Letitia Stauch in the afternoon hours, approximately after about 2:14 on January 27th, 2020, at his residence, and more specifically in his bedroom. Physical evidence recovered from the residence and inside Gannon's bedroom supports that a violent event occurred in his bedroom which caused bloodshed, including blood splatter on his walls, and enough blood loss to stain his mattress, soak through the carpet pad, and stain the concrete below his bed. They have corresponding pictures in this affidavit, but they are in black and white because it's a copy, obviously. So nothing's really clear. I am going to try and see if I can locate colored pictures of these online, and if I do, I'll place them in this video if they're not too gory and too just traumatic. Based on evidence recovered from the residence, Gannon's remains were eventually brought through the house into the garage and likely loaded into the back of Letitia's Volkswagen Tiguan. After cleaning the murder scene, Letitia utilized the Tiguan to transport and dump Gannon's remains on the evening of January 28th, 2020. Letitia likely disposed of his remains off Highway 105, South Perry Park Road in Douglas County, Colorado. Indeed, the Metro Crime Laboratory determined that blood discovered in Gannon's bedroom, the Stauch's garage, and blood on a piece of particle board located off of Highway 105 South Perry Park Road all matched Gannon's DNA profile. On Monday, January 27th, 2020, Gannon Stauch stayed home from school. Based on text messages from Letitia to Mr. Stauch, Gannon was up most of Sunday evening with a stomach problem. Letitia did tell Gannon's school, Grand Mountain Elementary, that Gannon would be absent on Monday. Investigators were able to verify that Gannon was marked as an excused absence that day. Letitia also told Al that, "I'm just going to give them an excuse at work and stay with him." Indeed, Letitia did come up with an excuse to stay home from work with Gannon because his stomach hurt and he was up all Sunday night. Okay. She said that her stepfather had been killed in a car accident and died. When I was first putting together everything for this video weeks ago, I did look into it, and Letitia's stepfather was dead and had passed, but years before. So she's lying to her employer. And honestly, like, I get it. We've all lied to our bosses to get out of work. Like, we're sick. I remember when I was like 19, I said I had mono just so I didn't have to go to work for like 2 weeks. But I was a teenager and I was lying about being sick. And she's an adult, and she's lying about a family member dying so she can stay home from work. So this is the kind of person we're dealing with. She's a compulsive liar, and nothing's off limits. Nothing's out of bounds when it comes to lying. She's a liar with no moral compass. I mean, we're all liars, right, in life. You have to admit to yourself, even if you don't want to say it to me, we've all lied at one time or another, probably several times. And sometimes these lies are to get out of something. Sometimes these lies are to save the feelings of somebody we love. Sometimes these lies are just to, make our lives a little easier. But in the end, most of us have a moral compass, even when it comes to lying. There's certain things we won't lie about. We don't lie about our family members dying because that's some bad juju there. It's not a good thing to do. But Letitia has no moral fiber, moral high ground, or boundaries when it comes to lying. And as you will see as we keep going, she lies about everything. From family members dying to fake sexual assaults. It's just horrible. Other electronic evidence, such as time and date stamped photographs and videos, were recovered from Letitia's cellular telephone that indicated Gannon was likely still alive during the morning of January 27th, 2020. Now, I believe that they're talking about the picture of Gannon laying in bed. And obviously, I think they're talking about other things too, but that one picture of Gannon laying in bed, it's incredibly eerie and scary to me. And I think I talked for 3 hours with Linda from It's a Crime yesterday on the phone because I really needed somebody to bounce all of this off of. And I know she's covered this case extensively. So I had my own feelings and my own suspicions and my own thoughts and also questions. And usually talking this out with somebody helps me figure it out. And nobody in my real life wants me to talk for hours about true crime. Even my husband, he can tolerate it for so long, but not for 3 hours. So it's really nice to have friends in the true crime community. Linda, John Crimes, these are people that I go to constantly to kind of bounce things off of. My Patreons also, I like to bounce things off of. So you need that in order to really make sense of your own thoughts. And we were talking about this picture where Gannon's laying in bed, and it just appears like Letitia took the picture from a weird angle, from his feet, not his face. And we were almost wondering, is this child sleeping in this picture? Is this child sick in this picture? Is he unconscious? Is he even still alive at this point? And those are questions that we had and questions that we legitimately have the right to have, considering that Letitia Stauch lies about everything. So the picture that they have in the affidavit, it's black and white once again, so I cannot tell if it's the same picture I'm seeing online. But it says image taken on 1/27/2020 at 8:13 in the morning. And this is a picture that shows Gannon laying in bed. As displayed in paragraph 54 below, images were taken on Letitia's cell phone at about 8:13 a.m. and 8:17 a.m. on the morning of January 27th, showing Gannon sleeping in his bed. Of particular note, his Nintendo Switch, which is a small gaming console, it's a handheld video game system, is visible in the photo lying next to him on the bed. And A.L. Stauch has said that this gaming system was of high importance to Gannon. To date, investigators have been unable to locate this Nintendo Switch. It should also be noted that Letitia used her phone the following day, January 28th, 2020, at about 12:57 to conduct a Google search. Can Nintendo find my Switch? There's also a detailed list of the rest of her Google search history, which is incredibly hilarious at times and depressing and just desperate, and it really gives a big insight into the mind of Letitia Stauch. And we'll get into that, whether it be in this video or the next, depending on how long this takes. But the reason the police bring it up earlier on before they talk about the search history is because they want you to understand that due to the search history, they believe it occurred reasonably because she was contemplating how she would dispose of Gannon's Nintendo Switch. It says in item 30 here, I conducted a Google search for the term, can Nintendo find my Switch, and learned that the Switch does not come with any sort of tracking ability. As such, Letitia likely felt it was safe to dispose of the Switch and used the missing Switch to help deceive law enforcement into searching for Gannon as a possible runaway. So if this Nintendo Switch is super important to Gannon, as it was, he's an 11-year-old boy. I mean, you can't ever find me these days without my Nintendo Switch, which is actually Aiden's Nintendo Switch, but I have stolen it from him. But that's okay, because he stole the PS4 from me, so we kind of traded off. I am so obsessed with Animal Crossing right now. I don't leave my house unless I have the Nintendo Switch. Even if I'm just going to the store, I pop it into my bag, because you never know. You might have to wait in the car for a little while, and you might want to play, and there's certain things I have to do throughout the day to, keep the progress going. So I get that completely. So what she's trying to do is make the Nintendo Switch disappear, because if Gannon disappears with the Nintendo Switch, it's more likely he ran away because he brought his Nintendo Switch. Okay, so item 31 says, ultimately, investigators located video surveillance from a neighbor's surveillance camera, and we looked at this surveillance footage in other videos, and it showed what investigators believe to be Letitia and an individual that appeared to match Gannon's physical description depart their residence in the Nissan Frontier in the morning of January 27th, 2020. So here's a couple of things. The person appearing to match Gannon's description. The neighbor who has that video surveillance also said he has sound on that video surveillance, and he could clearly see Gannon in that video. So we have to kind of go ahead and believe that it was Gannon. So the affidavit does go on to say that this video camera is several homes away, and it doesn't provide images clear enough to make positive identifications of those captured in the recording. So this was the neighbor who had that footage, and this footage also has sound attached to it, which I don't believe we saw or heard in the video that we have access to. This is also the same neighbor who, after Gannon went missing, approached Letitia and asked her if she wanted to see the footage because it might help find him, and she said no. And then later, he did show the footage to Al Stauch, Gannon's father, and then Al at that point said, oh my God, she was lying. It's also interesting to me that they take Al's Nissan Frontier this morning and not Letitia's Tiguan, which is her main vehicle, the vehicle she would usually drive. Why did they choose to take the truck instead of her SUV? So in the affidavit, the investigators believe that Gannon left the house with Letitia that morning and returned with Letitia that afternoon. Now, I'm not sure if they have additional footage, maybe from a Ring doorbell or something, where they see Gannon physically coming into that house. But if they don't, in my opinion, I wouldn't be so sure that Gannon came back home with Letitia. And once again, yes, this is made by the police. We got to trust them and everything, but this was made 2 weeks before Gannon's remains were found. And it's also just going on a very grainy surveillance footage, which they admitted themselves was a grainy surveillance footage. They assumed and kind of put together the fact that Gannon came home with Letitia based on what they found physical evidence-wise in the house, and we are going to discuss that. It even says here, after viewing the video, I cannot be sure if another person exited the vehicle or not, but I submit Gannon likely did return home with Letitia that afternoon. These times corroborated by data collected from an ADT security system installed in the Stauch's residence are discussed below in more detail. So they clearly say in this, they can't tell for sure whether another person came home with Letitia. But due to the physical evidence of the murder in the house, in Gannon's bedroom, they believe that he did. And that is what they're going on. Not that they see a shadow, not that, they could physically see somebody or that they have other information or other evidence we don't know about. They are basing this because of what happened in the house and when they think it happened. So they talk about Letitia's cell phone here and Gannon's cell phone. And when Letitia and Gannon left that morning, Letitia left her phone at home. And they think that this is odd because from a forensic search records of her phone, they found she's an active user of social media, including but not limited to Facebook and Instagram. We know Letitia loves Facebook. A more detailed review of Letitia's iPhone screen time log between the 25th and the 29th revealed that Letitia spent approximately 38,607 seconds on Facebook and Facebook Messenger alone, which equates to approximately 10.7 hours of cumulative time over those few days. So here's the timeline. T locked her phone and left it at home at 9:56 a.m. T and Gannon left the house at 10:16 a.m. And then at 10:37 a.m. there's a message sent from Gannon's cell phone to T's daughter's Harley's cell phone. T's daughter Harley's cell phone. And the text message reads, Tisha left phone at home. If you need her, text me. At 11:22 a.m., Letitia can be seen at Petco making a purchase. Gannon is not seen anywhere in that store. And then, because her phone was left at home, and I believe she turned Gannon's phone off, Letitia and Gannon's whereabouts were unknown between 11:22 a.m. and 1:22 p.m. So the weird thing about the fact that she chose this Petco, right? Because it's located at 5020 North Nevada Avenue in Colorado Springs, but it's approximately 22 miles away from Letitia and Al's house and is a 30-minute drive based on Google Map directions. And there were other Petcos that she could have gone to that were closer to the house. And given that we don't know what her location or whereabouts were for the 2 hours after that, we're not sure why she would decide to travel to a further Petco to make a purchase and then disappear for 2 hours. And then she'll back up on the map at that same Petco, making another purchase. So Al sent a text message to Gannon's cell phone at about 12:06 p.m. and it says, "Hey buddy." This message wasn't answered until 1:21, where Gannon texted back to Al, "Can I at least play Zelda?" And then Al Stauch responds back to his son, or who he believes is his son, because at this point, I don't believe that Gannon had possession of his own cell phone. Not today, buddy. So apparently, Gannon would have been grounded from playing video games, playing his Switch, and he's responding back to Al asking, "Hey buddy, how are you?" or whatever. Like, he just wants to play his video game, which is the way that an 11-year-old boy would respond when their parents texting them if they're not allowed to be playing their video games. But I don't believe that it was Gannon who responded ever. I don't think he had his phone at all at any time after they left that house, or even for quite some time before, in my opinion. So when that text message was sent to Harley, I believe Letitia sent it. When the text message was sent to Al, I believe Letitia sent it. Okay, then we see Letitia at 1:22 making a second Petco purchase from that same Petco. And then at 1:43, there's a Google search from Gannon's phone. So this Google search happened on Gannon's phone before Letitia and Gannon, or just Letitia, arrived back to the Stauch residence. And it says, "Can my parent find my cell phone if it's off?" Now, the investigators submit that this internet search was likely conducted by Letitia on Gannon's phone and not Gannon himself, based upon the content of the search, the way the search terms are phrased, and the presence of a period in between phone and if. Now, at first, I didn't understand what they meant by this. I thought maybe it was just some sort of autocorrect thing. Sometimes you spell one word incorrectly and then somehow you end up saving it in your phone as that word. So then every time you spell that word, it's incorrect. But it appears instead that Letitia has a habit of hitting the period button instead of the space button when she's texting or even searching in Google. And you'll see that in her Google searches, that there's a lot of these periods where spaces are supposed to be. And in this Google search, allegedly done by Gannon, there's a period between phone and if. And there's no history of Gannon texting that way, but there's quite a bit of history of Letitia texting that way. There were other internet searches with a period in a normal space area in Gannon's search history, which they also reasonably believe were conducted by Letitia. Furthermore, the search term was parent, singular. I admit it is reasonable that Mr. Stauch only, not Letitia, would be interested in the location of Gannon's phone, and that Letitia was possibly deliberating on how or if she would dispose of Gannon's phone after she murdered him. Now, the police did their own Google search, "Can my parent find my cell phone if it's off?" They did it identically to the way that it was done on Gannon's phone, and the first answer returned in the search engine reads, "The answer to your question depends on what method is being used to track your location." Now, Gannon's phone was found at the Stauch residence, so they assumed that Letitia didn't get rid of Gannon's phone because she feared that it would be traceable. Now, what I want to know, which I can't figure out or find anywhere, is was there any search history or location history, I should say, on Gannon's phone for those 2 hours that were missing? Because allegedly the only phone that was in that vehicle was Gannon's phone. And what I believe I ended up kind of coming to the conclusion to is that the phone was shut off. And then when it was turned back on, the message from Al that had been sent earlier came through and was responded to at that time. Okay, so the Nissan Frontier returns back to the Stauch residence at about 2:19 p.m., and it looks like the house was, disarmed from the security system at 2:22 p.m. Lena returns home from school at 3:15 p.m. Now, when Lena got home from school, Tisha told Lena that Gannon was sick and sleeping and that Lena couldn't see him, and then she sent Lena outside to play. Due to this, investigators believe that Gannon had already been killed by the time Lena came home, and that Letitia was cleaning up the mess, which is why she wanted Lena to go outside. There's another message that comes in from Al to Gannon at 3:55 p.m., and it just says, "Hey, buddy." And this message was not read until several hours later. that text message ended up getting read at about 7:40 p.m. Okay, so then Harley arrives home from work and picks up Lena, and this is about 4:42 p.m. Now, here's the thing. They were able to prove that Lena was at school that day and that Harley was at work that day. And it goes on to say in item 50, to be clear, investigators have not located any evidence that any other person besides Lena and Letitia had access to Gannon between 10 a.m. and 5:43 p.m. on January 27th, 2020. They have motion sensors in their house, and I'm familiar with this a little bit. I have some motion sensors in my house in certain areas of the house, and essentially it's connected to your security system. So if you even enter a room, it's going to send a message and kind of record this motion detected in that room at that time. And while Letitia and Gannon were gone on Petco and, for 2 hours in an unknown kind of location, there was no motion sensed at the house. And this is going to be important later when Letitia claims she was attacked in her home when she got there. So 17-year-old Harley gets home from work and immediately essentially takes Lana away. And I believe, my opinion allegedly, that this is because Letitia was like, hey, you got to get her out of here. And I also need you to pick up some things from the store. Because later, she sends a text message and asks her to pick up carpet cleaner, trash bags, and baking soda, which Harley does buy. Now, it's not like she asked her in this text, hey, while you're out, do you think you can grab these things for me? She just gives a list of what she needs. So what I believe is before Harley and Lena left, Letitia was like, I need some cleaning supplies. I'll text you a list while you're out. Trying to get them out as quick as possible. And then she does text a list. And this is a list that is kind of what you would need if you'd gotten blood all over and you want to clean the blood up. Baking soda is very good for blood stains because if you put the baking soda on a blood stain, it's supposed to soak up the blood and make it easier to clean up afterwards. Carpet cleaner, baking soda, and trash bags. Additionally, there was a big gallon of vinegar at the Stauch residence, and Al said when he left for his trip, it was about half full, but when the investigators came, the bottle was empty. Vinegar is also very good for cleaning up blood stains. Police arrived at the Stauch residence about 3 hours after Letitia called 911, and when they did, Letitia's main vehicle, her Volkswagen Tiguan, was backed into the garage, which is significant because there was blood found on the garage floor. Blood that would have been located right under the back, the rear of the vehicle, and it matched Gannon's DNA. Now, remember in the first Gannon video when we were talking about Letitia's statement and how she was saying that her and Gannon were in the garage and working with tools and stuff, and then he cut his foot and she sat him on the back of the car so she could clean it up and bandage it, and I said this never really happened. This was Letitia setting the stage and creating a narrative for why Gannon's blood would be found in the garage. And it looks like that's exactly what happened. So, I was right. It's not something I want to be right about, but it was just too perfect. The fact is, Letitia Stauch never says anything unless it's relevant. She never says anything unless it's going to pop up later. So at the time, you might be like, wow, this is random. What does it matter if he cut his foot? We're asking where he is now. What friend is he with? Whose house did he go to? We don't really care at this point if he cut his foot when you guys were in the garage the other day. It seems random at the time, but then later, it'll pop back up. And she thinks that at this point, she's going to say, oh, well, yeah, of course his blood was found in the garage. Remember weeks ago I told you that he cut his foot and I bandaged it? Well, that's why the blood was there. She's planning ahead because she thinks she's smarter than everybody. But what she doesn't realize is she's very transparent. She's very easy to see through. Further forensic testing indicated the presence or likely presence of blood on the vehicle's rear bumper. Now, keep in mind, when the police show up this first night, they still think they're looking for a missing child. They don't really suspect anything just yet. And this is why they do a partial search of the house, not a full search. They're not going all over. They're not looking in closets. They're not looking in cars. But it's later when it begins to be more clear that Letitia's lying that they start to suspect her, and then they send a forensics team into the house. And what they do is they're going to spray luminol all over everything. And that's why they say likely indicated presence of blood, because the luminol is going to light up in places where blood was, but was cleaned. And then what they have to do is they have to swab those areas, send them to the laboratory, the forensic laboratory, to have it tested further to see if it really is blood, if it's human blood, and whose blood it is. So in the affidavit, once again, they showed two pictures. They showed the picture that Letitia took of Gannon lying in his bed on the morning of the 27th, and then they show a picture that the El Paso County Sheriff's Office took of that bedroom, obviously without Gannon in the bed. I hope I can find these pictures in full color form so we can see the details and I can show you, but according to the affidavit, they show the two pictures. The left was taken by law enforcement when they responded to the 911 call. The right was a picture recovered from T's phone, and that had been taken earlier in the day. In T's picture, the placement of Gannon's body on the bed is in the same location. Large volumes of blood would later be found on the wall, on the carpet, and on the concrete below the carpet. Additionally, the bedding in the picture is different, and the bedding in the picture taken by T was not found during any of the 5 searches later done of the Stauch residence. It also appears that Gannon's bed would usually have been pushed flush against the wall, and his father Al confirmed that this is true. This is the way Gannon's bed usually would have been placed. But in the photos from T's phone, it can be seen that Gannon's bed is not pushed flush against the wall, which would have allowed for blood to get into the walls and the floor in the corner of his bedroom where it was found. And I'm going to give a little spoiler alert to what I believe, because the reason I feel like the bed was not pushed flush against the wall in T's picture was because I believe that on Sunday night, she beat Gannon badly enough where he bled quite a bit. And I believe that she put him in bed, and he may have been unconscious. He may have been just too weak to move. And maybe she just hoped he would, bleed out during the night and they would take care of things for her and then she could hide the body. But he didn't bleed out that night. He was still alive on Monday morning in bad shape, as we can see from the way he walks to the car as if he's injured. And I think that's where the blood came from. And I think she pushed the bed away from the wall so she could clean up the visible blood on the wall before taking that picture to send to Al. That's just my opinion. It's my speculation. And in a case like this where everything's sealed, where honestly I believe Letitia will never tell the truth, will never confess, will never admit that she had anything to do with Gannon's murder. Really, speculation based on evidence is what we have, and it's okay to do so. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. So they're basically showing the comparison of the two pictures. One, because they want you or whoever's reading this, like probably not us, a judge or something, to understand that the position Gannon's body was in Letitia's picture matches up with where large amounts of blood were found under his bed. So much blood that it soaked into the carpet and it soaked into and stained the concrete underneath, as well as hit the wall. They found so much blood that had clearly been cleaned up when they took the electrical socket apart. So they took the faceplate off the electrical socket. There was a clear outline of blood underneath that faceplate around the electrical socket. So enough blood where it's dripping down the walls. And they want to show you that obviously the bedding is different, that she cleaned up her crime. She killed this boy or hurt him very badly enough where he would bleed that drastically. And then she proceeded to clean up her mess. And in doing so, she took the bedding and the sheets off, even though the blood had gone through and stained the mattress. And she changed the bedding, and nobody's been able to find the actual bedding that was on there when this picture of Gannon laying down is taken. Okay, so now I've skipped a little bit because we're going to talk about that in another video. And I've skipped down a little bit to item 107, which is on page 14. And it says investigators searched the Stauch residence several times over several weeks after applying for and being granted search warrants from this court. The purpose of these searches was to collect evidence, including biological evidence in support of the captioned investigation, the murder investigation. The forensic searches were conducted by the Colorado Springs Metro Crime Lab. To avoid confusion, the January 28th, 2020 initial search was authorized by Mr. Stauch, and he provided consent to search the residence. Not all of the evidence recovered is included below. However, the forensic testing results of several items, including a pair of size 8.5 Nike shoes, are discussed in paragraph 126. So it says Gannon's remaining family members, his father and his sister, and eventually Landon as well, were living in the residence during the period of these searches, and investigators did not initially seal the residence off. Crime scene analysts from the Colorado Springs Metro Crime Lab responded to the residence and found traces of blood throughout the residence based on Blue Star Forensic Latent Blood Stain Reagent tests, and I believe that's luminol. There was visible blood in Gannon's room, in the garage, and other portions of the house. So because they didn't just find his blood in his bedroom and in the garage, they found it throughout the house. This is why they believe that she killed him in the bedroom, where the majority of the blood is, and then carried his body down through the house into the garage, where she then loaded him up into her Tiguan. So it says Blue Star Forensic Stain has similar limitations to luminol, which has been described and discussed above. Okay, so Blue Star Forensic Stain seems to be related to luminol. Let's look it up. So it says Blue Star Forensic Latent Blood Detection Tools, and it looks like some sort of kit here. It's yellow formula with a spray bottle. It says this new chemical formula based on luminol surpasses the others in performance and overcomes their drawbacks for an easy and reliable use. This video is not sponsored by Blue Star Forensic, even though it sounds like I just gave you an ad. So basically it says it's a blood enhancement tool whose purpose is to reveal blood stains that have been washed out, wiped off, or are invisible to the naked eye. And this product is intended for crime scene investigators, even though it looks like you can just buy it online, which is really interesting. I would like to do that and then bring it with me like a kit to every hotel that I ever stay at. And essentially, I'm getting the impression that it's kind of more advanced technology than luminol, which has been used for years, and it's made it possible to eliminate inconvenient elements associated with other luminol-based reactive agents, because I think that luminol can sometimes light up when there's no blood present, but there's something with iron in it, essentially, because I think luminol detects iron, which is in blood, but also in other things. And it's trying to give us kind of a layout of the house at 6627 Mandan Drive, Colorado Springs, Colorado. It's a ranch-style single-family home, approximately 2,500 square feet with a 2-car attached garage. There are 4 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms in the residence. 2 of those bedrooms are in the basement, including Gannon's. Next to Gannon's room, there's an unfinished utility room, and on the other side of the basement, another bedroom and a bathroom. There's a staircase with a small landing that allows access from the main level to the basement, and the garage is accessible from inside the residence. I'm sorry if this is boring to you guys, but it's very relevant, and a lot of people didn't want to read, this entire 32-page affidavit, so I'm summarizing it, but also pulling it back to other parts of the case as we go along, because I want to get a really thorough overview of what happened here. And at the end of these videos, when we formulate our opinions on what we think happened to Gannon, which may be different than what the affidavit states happened to Gannon, we're going to need all this information to refer back to. So it says that the Blue Star Regent was applied to Gannon's bedroom, the hallway leading to the utility room from his bedroom, the utility room itself, all of these things are in the basement, the staircase and landing leading upstairs from the utility room, the pathway to the garage from the stairs, and the garage area itself. In all of these areas, investigators found positive results for the likely presence of blood. So like I said, they believed that he was murdered in his room, which is in the basement, and then brought upstairs and into the garage, where he was then loaded into her vehicle. Specifically in Gannon's bedroom, in a corner of the room, investigators located an area where suspected blood had seeped through the carpet, through the pad, and stained the concrete. Furthermore, there was also blood stains and projected blood spatter located on the walls in this area. Indeed, over 50 droplets of suspected blood were found on the walls near Gannon's bed. Crime scene investigators also suspected someone attempted to clean the walls based on the way the Blue Star Regent reacted on the wall, so it's going to show swipe marks and wiping marks. Gannon's mattress was also seized and contains a red stain consistent with blood in the same area as the stain on the carpet and the blood cast off on the walls. The stains on the mattress were swabbed, but they were not tested with Blue Star Regent. The laboratory results have not yet been returned, but because other blood in the area was determined to be Gannon's blood, investigators suspect the blood on the mattress is also Gannon's blood, and this is a very easy assumption to jump to, right? I mean, there's blood on his bed, there's blood under his bed, there's blood all over his wall, and his blood that has come back positive for his blood has been found throughout, the house in this kind of path that one would take if you killed someone in the basement and then brought them into the garage. So that they're saying it hasn't been completely tested yet, which I'm sure it has by now, but obviously this is Gannon's blood. I have included several crime scene photographs that include the wall next to Gannon's bed and the carpet and carpet pad that were removed by investigators to expose the concrete below. Based on the orientation of Gannon's bed, the vast majority of the blood would be in line with the position of his head and torso and consistent with the stain of the mattress displayed above. I submit that the blood located in Gannon's room appears to have been cleaned up based on residual blood residue on the baseboards, an electric outlet cover, and the blood that soaked through the carpet. DNA laboratory testing has confirmed it was indeed Gannon's blood, and Gannon's body has not been found, reasonably indicating this was likely the scene of Gannon's murder. They brought in a man named Tom Griffin, who is an International Association for Identification Certified Senior Crime Scene Analyst. Wow, that's a long title. A bloodstain pattern analyst and a crime scene reconstructionist. Mr. Griffin examined the blood spatter on Gannon's walls, and his preliminary report was that the stains on the walls are consistent with one or more blood spatter-producing events, which could include gunshot, blunt force trauma, or a stabbing. Mr. Griffin did not believe the bloodstains were aspirated blood, primarily primarily due to the lack of air bubbles in the stains. Furthermore, the shape of the stains were affected by the surface texture of the drywall itself. Now, like I said, this was his preliminary report. So this man, Tom Griffin, he would have created like a professional report, to be submitted. And at this time, they hadn't received it, but I'm sure they have now. But once again, since Letitia's arrest, everything is sealed. So we don't know what the results from that were. But essentially, it's stating the amount of blood looked like it would have come from blunt force trauma, stabbing, or gunshot. And when he says that there doesn't appear to be aspirated blood, that means somebody hasn't inhaled their own blood and then breathed it back out, as is what happens sometimes when a person is injured, or, a certain injury can cause you to aspirate your own blood and pull it into your lungs, and then you'd breathe it back out, but that would make a different kind of pattern. It goes on to say trace evidence swabs of suspected blood were obtained from the electrical socket near Gannon's bed. These swabs revealed the blood was indeed Gannon's blood based on DNA profile testing. The electrical socket also has evidence of streak marks, which are reasonably suspected to be from Letitia's attempted cleaning. When investigators removed the outlet cover, a visible red stain was present, outlining its edges. The presence of this stain tends to support that there was enough blood around the outlet cover to seep around its edges, leaving a visible outline. So when she cleaned up, she wiped down the wall socket, but she's too stupid to unscrew it and clean underneath, or she thought the police would be too stupid to check. I don't know which. Either way, she's stupid. I've also included a photograph of the suspected blood stain in the concrete located in the corner of the bedroom where Gannon's bed was positioned. This stain is also visible in the photo depicting the suspected blood spatter on the walls. The carpet above this stain in the concrete was clean, and investigators suspect Letitia cleaned the area based on carpet fibers on scrub brushes. So they found a bunch of these carpet cleaning brushes in the dishwasher of the house, and the dishwasher had already been run, but they were still able to pull carpet fragments from these brushes. So it's clear that she thoroughly cleaned some sort of carpet, which is probably the one in his room that had blood on it, but didn't anymore. And then there was blood found underneath on the concrete. Once again, either she didn't think that they were going to look there, or she didn't realize that it had soaked through and could possibly stain the concrete, or she just thought that cleaning the carpet would buy her time, and maybe everybody would just buy this whole runaway or kidnapped story. It goes on to say that the acquisition of carpet cleaning supplies, vinegar, baking soda, would have helped her to clean this blood pretty well, and they also make note that the house was a new construction build, and the Stauch family was the only family to have lived here. So they're basically trying to say, there weren't other families who lived here before, so somebody didn't get like a nosebleed in this room. There's really no potential that it could be somebody else's blood. On January 29th, 2020, investigators recovered a piece of carpet from the utility room with possible blood stains. The recovery of this carpet tends to further support the positive alerts from the Blue Star Regent in the utility room. It says ESPO deputies that responded to the Stauch home on January 27th did not notice the bloodstains in Gannon's bedroom, and it should be noted the initial report was that Gannon had left the home and had not returned. As additional information was developed, more forensic searches of Gannon's room were conducted, which revealed the aforementioned evidence. There were small traces of blood found in the depression of the drywall and paint texture that Letitia failed to remove when she cleaned the murder scene. Now, in order to match his DNA, investigators submitted swabs from Gannon's toothbrush bristles, toothbrush head, and from a tooth retainer that Al said had belonged to Gannon. DNA swabs were also taken from Gannon's biological father, Gannon's biological mother, and from Letitia Stauch. From these samples, DNA profiles for these individuals were developed and used as comparison for other testing. In summary, Gannon's DNA profile was found from blood samples taken in the garage, on the outside of his size 8.5 Nike shoes, and in Gannon's bedroom. Letitia's DNA was recovered from the interior of the size 8.5 Nike shoes. I submit to the court that the lab results tend to corroborate the theory that Gannon was indeed murdered in his bedroom, brought into the garage, and his remains loaded into the Volkswagen Tiguan, subsequently to be disposed at an unknown location. So that's going to be it for this video. We basically went over the forensic evidence that they found in this house, consistent with the fact that Gannon had been murdered in the house by Letitia Stauch. But I have some questions about that, and I do want to, kind of go into deeper detail after we cover all the evidence found in the affidavit. But why was his blood found on his shoes if he was in bed at the time of, being murdered? Why would his blood be found on those shoes? I mean, I don't let my kids get in the bed with their shoes on. I don't know about you guys. And from what I can tell, and I mean, Gannon's covered with a blanket in the picture that Letitia showed, but he doesn't appear to have his shoes on. You have to understand that if their timeline is true, Letitia would have had an hour after she got home, allegedly with Gannon from the Petco, and when Lana got home from school. So kind of like a little less than an hour. And in this time, they are alleging that she killed Gannon in his bedroom and then was able to take his body downstairs and kind of start cleaning up the blood. And then when Lena got home, she sent her outside so she could continue to clean up. But that's a very short period of time. Why would you decide all of a sudden to kill this child in his bed? And I have a theory, and my theory, it doesn't follow technically the affidavit theory. It would kind of suggest that I think she beat him badly on Sunday night. Monday, he was still alive and hurt. She was afraid that he was going to say something when Al got home, and she knew she had to, get rid of him. So I believe that the blood in the bed and in the room may have come from when she had physically abused him on Sunday after the whole candle incident, which I don't even believe that he dropped a candle. I think she did it specifically so she could justify to him why she was beating him. I think she hurt him badly enough where he was bleeding, and he laid there all night, maybe in and out of consciousness, suffering, bleeding, crying. Maybe even at one point he said, I'm going to call the police, or I'm going to tell my dad, or I'm going to tell my mom. She took his phone away. When Monday morning dawned and he was in bad shape but still alive, she was like, okay, I gotta do something about this. So she didn't clean up the mess in his room because she had to call into work and call school and let them know he wasn't coming and make up an excuse to Al. And then she took him to that Petco, so there would be, proof that she was there. And then she brought him someplace else, and I believe that's when she killed him. And I believe that's when she left his body there. And then I believe she came back to the house, and then she started cleaning up the mess. Because you'll see from, the next video we're going to do, the motion detectors in the house kind of give an indication that Letitia wouldn't have really had time to do what she did to Gannon when she got home from Petco before Lena got home. There wouldn't have been time for that based on her movements and a bunch of other things. But that's just my theory. I don't think Gannon came home with her. I think the blood was there because she had beat him very badly. And who knows what else she did to him, but he was still alive. And when I talked to Linda from It's a Crime, she told me a story that a subscriber had shared with her saying that something similar had happened to a family member of hers who was beaten very badly with some sort of weapon. I can't remember exactly what. And he should have died, but he didn't die because he was strong, he was a fighter, and he managed to live through that. But there was a great deal of blood, but he did survive through it. So it's possible that Gannon survived through whatever physical abuse Letitia put on him on Sunday, and she did it when she left the house. She killed him when she left the house, because why would she drive around with him for hours and then come home an hour before Lena got home and say, now is a good time to do this, and go ahead and lay in your bed while I do this so that there's tons of physical evidence that's very difficult for me to get out. That's my theory. We will discuss further in the next video. Thank you guys so much for being here. Remember to check out Magellan TV in the description box if you haven't already. It's my favorite documentary service. I love it. I haven't run out of things to watch yet. It's very special to me. And we will keep talking about this. Let me know in the comments what you think. If you agree with me, if you don't, that's fine. You can be respectful about it, or I will block you from the channel. That's it. I mean, I'm kind of in like a no nonsense mode from now on, and for the past couple of months. We can disagree on whatever you want. I don't care. I love many people that I disagree with. I have family members that I disagree with on things heartily, and I still love them, and we still have really healthy discourse, and we can have healthy discourse. If you disagree with me, let me know why. Let me know what you think. Don't call me names. Don't call anybody else names. I know this is high tension time, and this is a high tension case, which is kind of why I was putting off covering it, because it just feels like it's a lot right now. But let's just be respectful to each other. There's enough hurt and hate and sadness in this world. We don't want to hear it at community. Thank you guys so much. I love you. Stay kind, stay beautiful, stay safe, and stay home. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Well, the levee don't break now, and the bottle's going straight down.